Shall we crack on with today's topic then?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, estimating.
Yeah.
So, we want to talk about what it takes to estimate for a piece of work, how to estimate your effort when you're giving a quote to a client, when you're sort of pitching for new work. So, just some various ways of doing that, and how to calculate something. You know, when you're not sure what to estimate, what's the best way to do? Do you overestimate, underestimate? What do you normally do?
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably have some different options, because most of my estimation that I do is for a small piece of work which is part of a bigger project.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily estimate anything to do with costing. It's normally just to do with time, and because the way the company works is that we charge a fixed fee, a fixed day rate. So we'll estimate how many days or half days or whatever a piece of work will take, and then the cost will go on that. Whereas with you, I guess it's a little bit different. What's your method?
Yeah, I think there's two distinctions here. So you work part of a team. There's a number of people going to be working on a project, and that's where your costings are based on the time spent by the individuals on this project, right? And that's the resources that are being used. And whereas, myself, it's a case of I've kind of got my pricing in place. So I think I know what I'm worth and what other agencies or competitors are charging for similar kind of work, especially projects. So when we talk about projects, I'm talking about websites, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. You can start and let's give a breakdown of how you guys price your time, the work that you're doing, and stuff like that.
Okay, well, in terms of pricing, our company charges a fixed day rate for a developer. I think they have different rates for different seniority levels as well. Junior, senior, lead, front end, back end. So each of those different roles has a price that the company charges going forward. And then when we are on a project, we work in a agile environment. We have small scrum teams, and we break our projects down into user stories and tasks and subtasks and epics and so on. And sometimes it's quite difficult when you've got a brand new project with no history. It gets easier over time. It's that very first estimation that you need to do. The very sprint zero is normally the hardest one to estimate, because you just don't know. You don't know how
Yeah.
long a piece of functionality is going to take. You need to generally base it on previous experience, and then give a rough estimate based on, okay, this piece of work took 2 days, so this one, which is very similar, will probably take around about 2 days. Hopefully it shouldn't take as long, because you've got experience from previous project, and maybe you can reuse some code, so it may be a bit quicker.
Yeah.
But that's generally a good starting point. So the way we do it is with story points, which start from 0, half, 1, 2, 4, like that, and so on. And they go up in the sort of Fibonacci sequence. Are you familiar? You know what Fibonacci is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I wasn't really good at maths, but yeah.
Yeah, it's when a number is the sum of the previous two numbers. So, and then you end up with a sequence. So it'd be 0, 1, 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. So it goes 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13.
So it's like exponential growth, isn't it? It's just
Yeah, basically, yeah. So if you were to put those onto a curve, you'll get an upward trending curve. And
okay.
it's just a good way of estimating your project. So something that's quite small, let's say, for example, you need to update some links in a website footer, right?
Yeah,
That probably take, 15, 20 minutes to do that, depending on your build process and everything. But even, let's say, at most, it'll take an hour to get that done.
yeah,
That, in our way of working, would be considered as a tiny task, and it may be given a story point of half.
right. I get you.
Whereas something like building a carousel could potentially take a couple of days, and that we might estimate that as around an 8, which would be a medium to large task. Something that's given a score of 13 points would normally be a very big project, and we tend to try and stay away from doing tasks at that level. We try to then break those down into smaller tasks. So
Okay.
once we've done our planning, most of our tasks are around 3 to 5 story points or less.
Right.
Some of them are small, but most of them are around 3 to 5. And those sorts of, you roughly translate story points into days as well. It's not really mapped one to one with days or hours, but I think in most people's head that's how it is mapped. So something that's 3 story points is normally about a day and a half worth of work at the most, and something that's an 8 would be like 2 to 4 days.
Okay.
And as you go, like I said, as you go on into a project, you learn from past experiences. So your estimations as you go on in each sprint tend to become more accurate.
Yeah.
There'll be times near the beginning where you might estimate it as an 8 and it ends up being a 5, and you end up completing that work a lot quicker. So then when you've got another one which is similar sort of size project, then you can adjust your estimate to an 8. Because what we want to do is we want to make our estimates as accurate as possible so that we're charging a fair price and we know how much work we can get done in a certain amount of time, because the project's got a go live date, has an end date, and if we're estimating that it's going to take 200 hours but it needs to be done in 150, then we know that we're over scope. So we need to either strip out some features or increase the team size.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the importance of getting the estimate, accurate as possible, is to see if we're on track for that end date.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of doing it. I didn't really like this. This is planning poker, right?
Yeah, planning poker, exactly. So at the
Yeah, I didn't. I had no like. I didn't had no concept of this. I had no idea this thing even existed, and then I had to you put it up in the notes, and I've googled it, and I was like, oh, that's a really interesting way of kind of looking at it, and it makes sense.
It does make sense. The first maybe 1 or 2 times it feels a bit weird, like doing that, especially if you're doing it with physical actual poker cards. You can get these Planet Poker playing card decks, and they're basically just cards with numbers, those numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, maybe bigger, and some of them have a question mark on them as well. So if you're unsure, like let's say you're estimating for a back end task, the idea is that the whole team estimates whether it's your job or not.
Right. Okay.
But sometimes some people just have no experience of that. So and then you can just put a question mark down and just say, I'm not sure, that I'm happy to go with the majority, is basically what you're trying to say there. Yeah. It feels a bit funny the first couple of times you do it. Sometimes it feels a bit silly, I thought. But once you see the value of it and, you get used to it, it's a really powerful tool. And there's some really good websites as well where you can do this for remote teams.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I was Googled it. I was like, "What the hell's that?" And I've come across so many different things, so many articles and links talking about this planning poker stuff.
Yeah.
And there's diagrams of the poker, like a deck and a hand and things like that. I was like, "Wow, this is really interesting." So I'm going to come back to that. Definitely have to read that.
Yeah, it's something that's only worth doing if you've got a team. If you're a solo developer, then obviously you don't need to do this. Or even if you're just a team of 1 or 2 people, I think once you've got to a team size of about 6 or 7, and especially when you've got a team of multiple skills, designers, developers, backend, QA, and all that sort of stuff in one sprint, one Scrum team, that's when you start when you need to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, that makes more sense for it to work. It's like a game, like a card game. You can't play with 2 players. You need at least 5 players, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a similar kind of scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean you could do it with 2 people. It's pointless. It's probably
Yeah.
you're better off just having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
It only makes sense when you've got difference of opinion as well, because the idea is that the task is presented to the team, whatever, on a screen or whatever, and everyone has their cards on them, and they choose a card and put it face down on the table. And it's only until everyone's put their vote in, then the cards are turned over, because you don't want other people's numbers to influence your vote.
Get you right. Right.
So everyone has their own idea of how long it's going to take, and then you flip them over, and then you'll see the trend. You might see everyone has voted for the same story points. Everyone's got a number two on the table or something. But if everyone's got a
Right.
number two and one person's put 13, then it's like, oh, that raises a
What's
flag.
going on there?
Yeah, so then you need to ask that person, do you want to give some more reasoning about why you think it's such a big task, or have you misunderstood what the task is? And a lot of the time it's a misunderstanding. But
Yeah.
then, there may be a valid reason for that. And then that's when the discussion opens up about, okay, maybe we need to find a middle ground somewhere.
Yeah, you've got that, and then you could potentially got maybe there's parts of a task that haven't actually been assumed correctly, and that one person's probably picked up on something and said, "Well, hang on a minute, I've actually done this before, and it took a lot longer, or it's a bit more complex,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm giving it a higher score."
Yeah,
Kind
definitely.
of
We get that a lot, especially with
thing.
some of our more senior back-end developers.
Right. Okay.
They they tend to have some scenarios in their mind when they're doing their
Yeah.
estimating, which sometimes someone in the front end might not know about, and obviously
Yeah,
vice
that's
versa
true.
as well. And that's normally a stumbling block for me. Like whenever I'm playing this sort of Planet Poker with my team,
Yeah.
is I don't understand everything about the back end, so often I'll just put a question mark on those sorts of questions.
Better to be safe.
Yeah, there's no point in well, there is a point. There is a point in estimating as well, giving your opinion. But if you're definitely not sure, you don't just want to put anything. You want to try
No,
and
yeah, you
you
can't
need to
if you
go with the
don't know,
majority
don't you?
then.
Hmm.
But generally it works and it's good. So it doesn't really
Nice.
come into for us. It is all about how long a task is going to take and how much effort is needed. It doesn't really the pricing of it doesn't come into play because that's you know handled by the sales team and project managers and stuff like that. So anyway, let's take a short break and we'll be back after this message. We are sponsored today by porkbun.com, where you can get a free .design domain name for 1 whole year. If you've ever tried to find the perfect URL for your design business, you probably know how hard it is to find an available .com. But now you have another option with .design. A .design domain name reflects what you do as a designer and helps elevate your branding. Major brands like Facebook, Adobe, Airbnb, Evernote, Amazon, and many more are already using .design, and the domain name is recognized in the same way as other top-level domain names by Google. Your free .design domain name comes with free email hosting, SSL security, a free site builder, and free WHOIS privacy as standard. Customers, clients, and employers instantly understand what you do before even arriving at your website. Unlike .com or .net, .design is more relevant and resonates with your audience. So, to get your hands on a free .design domain name for 1 whole year, head to porkbun.com and enter the coupon code INSPECTPODCAST at checkout. That's porkbun, PORKBUN.com, and use the code INSPECTPODCAST at checkout. Thank you to Porkbun for sponsoring our show. So, what about for you? What about when you get a new project? How do you handle it? Because you need to obviously give a quote, right, before anything.
Yeah. So I've got smaller tasks and jobs, and then I quote for them based on an hourly rate or a day rate, and it kind of like varies depending on the size of the task, and then obviously the larger projects, and the larger project would be a website. So we go back to the smaller tasks and smaller jobs, and that could be anything from doing an update to an existing website. It could be just adding additional links or adding a page. Really small sort of tasks. And for things like that, there's an hourly rate in place. And what we normally do is charge a minimum, like an hour is going to be used to get that task done, irrespective of if it takes half an hour. So that hourly rate for the first hour is going to be billable anyway. And where I got that from was working with other agencies. So when I used to work with other agencies, they had that in their terms and conditions, stating that their hourly rate, even if the work takes 15 minutes or half an hour, you're still liable to pay for the first hour anyway.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that and I kind of like went with that, and it works really well. Especially I get quite a lot of small jobs to do for clients on their websites. So it kind of helps with cash flow. It's a really good way to just to keep the cash, coming in and the work ticking over.
Yeah. And how did you find your rate for that?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. When I first started, I kind of looked around at what other freelancers were charging, and this is before I got into web. So as a designer, a graphic designer, I was looking at what other people were charging, and I kind of spoke to people within recruitment and people who targeted designers. Look for designers for other companies and things, and they kind of helped me to price myself, and they kind of put me within a bracket, like if you like, as a junior, and I kind of like started to get a bigger picture of how it kind of worked, or how you explained it with juniors, a middleweight and then senior and things like that, and I kind of like went with that. So initially started off like 25-30 pound an hour. That was my freelance rate, just working on design things and like logos and print design and things like that. And then with more experience and understanding and realizing how much time it would take me to get things done, I was getting things done much faster. And it was like a case of, well, I'm not really going to be turning over much money if I'm getting this job done even faster than I was before. Because you're stuck in this mindset, well, if I spend a lot of time on this task, I can earn quite a lot of money from it. But then the clients aren't prepared to pay that kind of money. They expect it to be done quick and efficiently and things like that. So it kind of grew from there. And I'm in a position now where I'm charging. I've just increased my rate, so it's about 60 to 70 pound an hour, and that is again is just based on what other people who are doing similar kind of things are priced at. Even agencies that I know of, that's what their hourly rates are. But again, it's just for small jobs and things like that. And where the bread and butter is on larger projects, and on websites and things like that. And that's an interesting one, because you've got people out there charging £500 to build a website, and you're like, how on earth are you doing that? How are you living, charging £500 for a website? But then I always remember I started somewhere, and that's what I used to charge back in the day when I first sort of broke into the industry. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where I got the figure from. It kind of was what people were charging at the
I
time.
think that's a pretty fair rate for a simple website from someone who's a fairly junior person. Around £500 is a fairly fair rate. But there's only so much time you can keep that up for.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that, if I give a quote to a new client, to someone I've never spoken to, I kind of break it down, give them a little proposal and a quotation for, it could be a simple website, a brochure website that doesn't do anything complex. But because I've been doing it for a while now, I've got my pricing set. So let's just say for a simple brochure website built on WordPress with a bespoke design, mobile response and everything, I'd start from like 2K. That would be the minimum that I'd expect for that. Purely because of the amount of time I've spent now on working on WordPress sites, building sites, the number of clients I've got, the types of clients I've worked with as well. The values there. If you come with me, you're going to get what you pay for, and the work's going to be good, and it's going to be done properly. Whereas if I've gone to the new client and explained that, and they'll turn around and instantly just say, "Oh well, I've spoken to so and so, and they said they can do it for £500." And I've got to a point where I can say that's fine. You can go with that person, and
Yeah, there's always going to be someone who can do the job for cheaper, no matter what type of
exactly,
work it
yeah,
is.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and we get that in multi-million pound projects in our agency. We still get clients who are saying that you're priced too high, but then there's plenty of agencies who are priced much higher than us as well.
This is it, and I say that as well. I say that there's people, agencies in London. I mean, you've come to me. I'm branded as an agency, and I have a number of people who'll be working on this project. So you got to think about that as well, and that's being factored into the quote.
Yeah,
And there's other agencies out there who will charge 5 times more than what I'm charging, or 10 times more that I'm charging. They get a heart attack. They're like, "Well, that's crazy. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be allowed to do that." I said, "Well, look, we can charge what we want to charge at the end of the day. as long as it's going to be justified by the quality of the work that we're doing,
Yeah.
and it's going to help you out and help your business out,
Yeah, I mean,
and
at work,
achieve its
I'm
goals.
not involved in pricing ever really
Mm,
at work,
yeah,
but there have been a couple of occasions where I've seen a quote that's gone to a client because I've needed to maybe vet the quote before it goes out or just confirm that everything's correct. And I've seen, the sort of prices that our company charges. It would be like a freelancer's dream to charge that sort of price for a
yeah,
single
I can
person.
imagine. Yeah,
So you're saying that you start at around 2 grand. That's like half a day's worth of charging for our projects. Yeah, for maybe a team of 3 or 4 people, that equates to about half a day. Most of our projects go on for several weeks at the minimum. So we're talking,
we're talking big money
yeah.
there.
So I'm quite happy I don't have to have those conversations with people because they can be quite difficult.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I've kind of figured it out for myself now, so I know where I'm at and what I should be charging for projects, because I can kind of get a guideline of just by speaking to the client and what they're saying. I've got an idea of what their budget is going to be, and where I should go in. And just to give you an example, I just spoke to a client yesterday. I had to drive all the way up to Hungerford to go and speak to a new client who I've just got on board actually, and these guys are like a AV hire company. They're pretty big, and I turned up there and I was like, wow, okay, they're a lot bigger than what I was expecting them to be. And one of the guys that I spoke there, one of the directors, had already told me they've already, had 2 quotes, and one of the quotes he basically just said, "I'd rather spend the money on a Ferrari." So I knew exactly what they've been quoted. And then he said the other guy had quoted him something a bit more reasonable, but they didn't know that person. They didn't trust that person,
Yeah,
and he seemed a bit flaky anyway. So I had a ballpark. I knew where I was going to go in, and I went in at about like the 8 to 10K mark, and they were happy with that. So you know, on the surface, I think what you see from the client, what they're saying, how they present themselves, and that kind of gives you an idea as well. That kind of helps to determine what you're going to be charging if you already know what your rates are and what you've charged previously for for projects and things like that.
yeah,
So that kind of helps, and it's a lifesaver when you've got a client like that. But when you haven't, when you've got tire kickers, wandering around and looking for the best bargain, especially for new designers like freelancers who are just getting into it and they wouldn't have an idea, they wouldn't know, they just want to get the work on board. And I've been guilty of this in the past, where I've taken people on just for the sake of it, just to get the work in, and those kind of clients prove to be more trouble than they're worth. And this is where the whole charging by the hour, charging by the day thing, I don't really agree with it, because you could take on a client where you could probably spend, okay, it's a small job like a logo design job, you can spend maybe 2 days on that job, and it's going to take 2 days, but then that 2 days will prolong and turn into a week, and then your pricing just goes out the window. The client's not prepared to pay for it because you've already said to them it's going to take 2 days, but it's taken a week. And that week could be prolonged because they weren't available to provide feedback, or when they do provide the feedback, it's taken even longer to get the stuff done, to get the work done. And when you're new in the industry, you're kind of like hesitant to say, well, it's taken longer because you guys have asked for these changes and this and that, and you haven't got any terms and conditions, and you kind of agreed on 2 days. So you spend a week on a job that literally just took 2 days, and you just get paid for the 2 days. So it's kind of like, I don't really agree with it, but you still got to use that kind of pricing model where you can.
yeah.
Um,
So
but
that sort of brings me into my next question that I was going to ask you is, once you've then given a quote to a client, what sort of steps do you put in place to ensure that that quote remains accurate? If your quote is
so
based on days, or do you are you saying that you just don't quote on days now? You quote for the whole job.
yeah, so any sort of web project, anything that's to do with web, web related. So we're building a website for a client, and that's going to be project based quote. So it will be, I'll know what I've charged before, and then my base is going to be £2,000. That's the minimum that I'm going to be charging for a website. And if they want anything really, really technical in there, any kind of bespoke functionality or anything like that, then that kind of work I'm going to be looking at sort of like a day rate, if you like, just to get a ballpark figure of how much more time and effort it's going to take to get that particular task done, and then I'll kind of like bolt that on to that 2K base for that project.
But surely, even with your base charge that you have, you each project will still have a deadline.
Yeah, well, I kind of determine the deadline, so I always put about 3 to 4 weeks on a web project.
Okay.
But if it's urgent and the client needs it done within a week, then I will charge more.
Okay. And have you been in any situations where you've given your 3 to 4 week estimate and you've gone over?
Yeah, that's happened. And usually, what happens is I always send out like a proposal to the client, and there's T's and C's in there which explain like, although this project's going to take 3 to 4 weeks, you know, there will be instances where this can like fall over at times, and an additional week could be added, and that could be down to the client not providing content on time, or it could be because we're really constrained and things are really really busy. And they're always generally happy with that, and I've never had any issues where clients come back and said, oh, this is just taking far too long, we're not going to pay you, or anything like that. But if it's down to the client, and this is also mentioned in the proposal and the T's and C's, if a client prolongs a project by asking for too many changes and amendments and things like that, then they're liable to pay per day for the additional work that's been carried out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's always factored in, and I think this is one thing that a lot of freelancers don't get right, and this is why they get screwed over. And my recommendations is to get a kind of bulletproof T's and C's in place. I could probably share the one that I'm using.
Yeah. Perfect.
We
If you
could
do.
probably put it on
Yeah.
the notes, and that'll help people out. And it literally just says, if you guys take the mic, then you're going to pay for the additional time spent on this project.
Yeah. Which is fair.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
what it all boils down
definitely.
to, really, isn't it? With whether it comes to estimating, quoting, as a freelancer in a massive company, it doesn't really matter. It's a conversation that needs to be had, and no two projects are ever going to be the same. So
Mm.
it's very hard to just put a blanket figure over everything and say, look, this is what we charge, and this is how long this sort of project will always take. 'Cause there's always going to be variance, and yeah, like you said, terms and conditions are very important. Contracts are very important. Maybe we should do an episode just about contracts and what sort of things to include in that.
Oh, definitely. I think that's very handy for anyone out there who's getting involved, because we've done quite a few episodes now to like to help people who are getting involved or who want to like take the plunge in development. That's the whole doing the work side of it, but then you've got the business side of it and the financial side as well, and contracts and all this kind of stuff. It'd be good
Yeah,
to get
it's a
that
big
out
old
there.
topic.
Yeah, it's huge.
All right, cool. I guess we could probably wrap it up there. We've covered all the stuff on the notes. So some points to consider. Estimating it's not easy. It's something that gets easier over time, but it's never easy at the beginning. And it's that's the benefit of making like long-term relationships with clients as well, because then these estimates can get more accurate over time, and you can start introducing little nuances to the estimate as well,
Yeah,
and there's an understanding, a two-way understanding over time as well. So it's a good thing to do. Any
definitely.
final words?
Yeah. No, not really. I think if you want to kind of price yourself in the industry, the best thing I could suggest is to get on Google and have a look at what other people are charging, and have a look at what agencies are actually willing to pay for junior developers and freelancers as well. Especially freelancers, they kind of dictate what the rate is, and that rate's been pulled from somewhere. So, and it kind of like it balances itself out across the industry as well. So they're very close, those kind of rates. So if you are a freelancer, you're getting into it, have a look at those rates and see what these recruiters are, willing to pay.
Yeah.
and that'll kind of help you out.
Yeah, and just remember, there's always going to be someone who does it cheaper. Just try not to let that bog you down. Try not to get into this mindset of undercutting people. Find your worth and try and stick with it. And
Yeah, value is very important. What you can provide for the client and the work that you're doing, and the client usually determines that as well. So that is the way it works.
yeah, wicked, good stuff. All right, we haven't chatted for a little while, so what's been going on? Have you got any things that you want to recommend? Anything you want to chat about that's come across your radar over the past couple of weeks?
Um, I actually came across a new. Oh, I don't know how new it is. It's a social media platform called Minds. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's very interesting, and I got onto it because of I don't know why I got onto it. To be honest, I think Joe Rogan might have mentioned it on one of his podcasts. Yeah, then I went on to minds.com. I had a look, and I was like, well, this is pretty much like Twitter.
Was it minds, as in
And
like your brain?
yeah,
MINDS
yeah,
.com.
MINDS. Yeah, I think it's minds.com. And I went on that, and it was like, well, this thing's to do with the blockchain, and you basically earn Ethereum tokens and things like that for if you post something and it gets likes
Okay.
and comments and things like that, then you get paid. And I had no idea of that. I didn't know that that was behind it. I just like the idea of it being somewhere where you can kind of like talk about anything without being put down.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of, like, you've got adult themes on there. You've got very sort of specific sort of like communities on there talking about very specific things. And I like that, because Twitter is a place that's becoming very, very volatile and toxic. And you can get involved in a conversation on there, and before you know it, you've got about 10, 20 people hounding you and sending you bloody offensive
Yeah. It's always
stuff.
been a place like
Yeah,
that.
so mine seems to be very, very.
But check out the podcast on Twitter. Check out Inspect FM on Twitter. We're not toxic.
Yeah, yeah, we're not. We're cool. We're pretty chilled
All
out.
right. Yeah, I'm having a look at the Minds website. It says featured on Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah. So
So
I got the app down, and it's really good. It's built really well, and it works really nicely. So I came across that. So it might be something for people might want to check out.
yeah, cool. I'll check it out. All right, I'm gonna send you to a website as well. It's by Evernote. It's evernote.design.
Oh, that's interesting.
So for any of the
Okay.
designers out there, and obviously the site's been created by Evernote, but it's not all about their service. It's basically a bookmark of loads of design resources.
Okay.
And it's got everything on there. It's got like design inspiration sites, community sites, places for free icons, free UI resources, learning about stock photos, videos, accessibility, animation tools, and it's just a basically a repository of all these different websites and just categorized into.
I've just pulled that out. That is pretty cool.
And it's got so many things on it. It's a brilliant place to use as your jumping off point if you're looking for inspiration for anything. It's got like design books, places to get backgrounds and patterns, tools, collaboration tools, wireframing tools, and each one, it's not just a bunch of links. Each one has a landing page that you can go to where you can read a little bit about what that product is before you then go and visit it. So yeah, it's a good
That's
place.
pretty cool.
It's worth bookmarking, and oh,
Done it already.
keep you pretty busy if you're gonna start looking through all of that.
Yeah, I can see this like being Netflix. Before you even watch anything, you just spend ages going through everything.
Yeah, exactly. Because I had someone asking me just a couple of days ago, like, where can I get some nice icons from? I can't remember who it was, and I sent them somewhere else, but then I came across this site and I was like, this is perfect. Someone needs icons, just send them here. It's got a whole category of icons which has about, I don't know, 40, 50 different links on it. So yeah, it's cool. Evernote.design. I like it when companies do that, when they're sort of open source, useful stuff for the whole community. Yeah, it's like Facebook.design as well, which is really good if you're looking for like UI templates. So if you're designing like an iOS app, they've got loads of templates of iOS devices, which you can then open up in Sketch or Figma or whatever. So it's good. It's good when companies do this. It needs to happen more often.
Yeah, definitely. This is going to be really handy. I've bookmarked it already, and I'm going to spend a bit of time on this.
Yeah, definitely. Links for these two things will be in the show notes as well, as with everything that we've discussed. I'll put some links into some Planet Poker sites as well. And if you can dig out that terms and conditions template you've got, you can maybe stick a PDF or something of that in there.
Sounds good, man. Cool. We'll speak soon.
Yep, speak later. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe in your podcast player and feel free to drop us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter @InspectFM, and you can find the show notes for today's episode and a full archive of all shows over at inspect.fm.